The boy casually tossed away a lottery ticket worth $5 million, because anything he wanted was easy to get. In high school he stole a classmate's tablet, and nobody ever found out until graduation. In college he secretly lived with a gorgeous senior, while hiding it from his girlfriend. But if you think he's some chosen hero blessed by fate, then you're completely wrong. His dark and twisted personality was shaped by years of repression. For 3 full years in high school, he suffered relentless bullying from a wealthy classmate, living a miserable and humiliated life. After finally graduating and getting into an average college, he immediately faced unemployment after graduation. Fortunately, John was easygoing by nature, never chasing fame or status. He only wanted to get through life peacefully. A night shift job at a convenience store was enough to survive. That night John was working his usual shift, when a drunk man suddenly walked in, demanding the most expensive item in the store. But after John handed it over, the drunk kept changing his mind and asking for something else. It was obvious he was looking for trouble, but since John worked in customer service, he patiently went along with the unreasonable requests. What he never expected was that after getting the merchandise, the drunk refused to pay and made a highly insulting gesture. John chased him outside and demanded payment, only to be met with endless insults. Thankfully, the drunk's friend was reasonable and stopped his troublemaking companion, repeatedly apologizing to John. He even paid for everything himself. His polite attitude instantly calmed John's anger. Soon it was time to clock out. John saw the store manager playing games with headphones on and asked to borrow a hammer to hang a new painting at home. The manager was completely absorbed in the game and ignored him the entire time. Not long after leaving the store with the hammer, John ran into the drunk again, but this time the arrogant man was lying motionless by the roadside. Thinking back to his earlier behavior, John felt it was karma at work and turned to leave. But when he reached a nearby corner, he spotted the drunk's friend ahead. In the end, he softened up and went over to remind him to check on his friend.
지금 옆에 친구분 주무시고 계신데 꺼지라고.
To his surprise, the polite man instantly changed his attitude, glaring at John and telling him to mind his own business. The sudden change left him speechless, so he secretly made a rude gesture behind the man's back. What he didn't realize was that there was a mirror ahead, and the man saw the entire thing. John was about to apologize, but the man suddenly slapped him hard across the face. John was stunned. Then the man began relentlessly beating the helpless John. John had no chance to fight back. He could only cover his head and beg for mercy, as pain and humiliation overwhelmed him. He was reminded of the 3 years of bullying he suffered in high school. Now he was being tormented all over again. Years of frustration and resentment finally exploded. He suddenly pulled out the hammer from his backpack and swung it hard at the man's head. In that moment, every bit of humiliation came pouring out. His soul finally felt released after years of pressure. The blow was not immediately fatal. The man staggered back to his feet. Dazed and confused, he had no idea who hit him. As soon as John came back to his senses, panic set in. He rushed over to check on the man. He never meant to take a life. It was nothing more than a split-second reaction. The man stumbled around like he was completely lost. Moments later he stopped breathing. Just as John stood there frozen, he heard movement behind him. A girl walking a Labrador slowly approached. Fortunately, she was blind and could not see what happened, but the dog became unusually restless, constantly sniffing around the body. Luckily, the girl pulled the dog away and left. John finally let out a breath of relief. He did not dare stay any longer and hurried away from the scene. Back in his tiny apartment, he desperately scrubbed away the blood. Fear completely consumed him. The pressure became so intense that he started hallucinating. He even imagined himself being arrested and locked up. After calming down a little, he looked at the picture still waiting to be hung, then suddenly remembered he had left the hammer behind. The next morning, detectives rushed to the scene after receiving a report, but the heavy rain had washed away all traces, and there were no surveillance cameras nearby. At first it seemed the case would go nowhere, but veteran Detective Zhang found a convenience store shopping bag in the victim's belongings. Following that crucial clue, he immediately checked the store's security footage. It clearly showed both victims spending time in the store that night, and one of them had publicly humiliated John. Detective Zhang quickly brought John in for questioning. Inside, John was terrified, but he forced himself to stay calm. With every question, his heart raced faster. Just as he was about to break under the pressure and confess, an officer suddenly arrived with a major lead. There had been a witness at the scene that night, who claimed the 2 victims got into a heated drunken fight and attacked each other with weapons. At the same time, the coroner found that the injury on the drunk man's head matched the radio carried by the other man. The evidence pointed to the man accidentally causing his friend's death, while he himself likely died from injuries sustained during the fight. Not long afterward, the drunk man's wife came in to give a statement. She explained that her husband and the other man had once been very close co-workers, but over time she unexpectedly developed feelings for the other man. They had already agreed that once her child got into college she would divorce her husband. With a complete motive and overwhelming evidence, the police quickly ruled the case as an accident caused by a drunken fight. But Detective Zhang remained convinced something didn't add up. He reviewed the convenience store footage again and again, yet the key moment when John borrowed the hammer was perfectly blocked by a fly, completely hiding the crucial clue. Still unwilling to let it go, Detective Zhang returned to the store. On the surface, he reassured John not to worry about the questioning, but he carefully watched every change in his expression. Seeing John remain calm without a single flaw, Detective Zhang finally dropped his suspicions. A few days later, the police released the identities of the 2 deceased men. To John's shock, the man he struck with the hammer turned out to be a serial killer who had been hiding for years. Looking at the news report, John felt no relief at having escaped disaster. Instead, he couldn't stop wondering where the hammer left at the scene had gone. What he never could have imagined was that the hammer that could have condemned him was sitting untouched inside the girl's home. Several more days passed. While working at the convenience store, John noticed an unexpected visitor. It was the girl from that night. John forced himself to act normal and continue working, but the first thing she said destroyed every bit of hope he had left. The girl calmly demanded 2 million won in hush money. Before John could react, she removed the glasses from her face. She was never blind. The dark glasses had only been hiding the scars on her face. That night she had witnessed everything John did, and she was the one who had hidden the hammer beforehand. Before leaving, she warned John to bring 2 million won by tomorrow, or she would expose everything and hand over the evidence. John's mind went blank. To protect the rest of his life, he swallowed his pride and asked the store manager for 3 months of salary in advance. He even secretly took his mother's retirement savings, finally gathering the huge sum within a single day. That night the girl left an address inside a cigarette pack, along with the time and place for the exchange. The next day John arrived exactly as instructed and handed over all the cash. He thought paying would finally end everything, but what the girl said next left him stunned.
이거랑 그거랑 교환하는 거 맞죠?
기억하고 있겠지만 메달이에요? 알죠? 메달이 왜?
The girl confidently argued that after witnessing the entire incident she had become an unwilling accomplice and was carrying enormous legal risks, so there was no way she would settle for only 2 million won. John snatched the hammer from her hands and firmly stated that 2 million won was all he had. He would not pay another cent, but the girl refused to back down. She even recited personal details about John's mother and sister. At that moment John finally realized taking back the hammer meant nothing anymore. His DNA was already all over the apartment. If she called the police, every one of his crimes would be thoroughly investigated. Seeing how panicked and helpless John looked, the girl was convinced she had him completely under her control. She even generously said that as long as John sent her money every month, she could lower the amount and make sure he stayed out of trouble. But she overlooked one thing: this seemingly timid man had already crossed a line he could never take back. The thought of being controlled by this woman for the rest of his life, and being ordered around like a servant, made John stop hesitating. He swung the hammer in his hand and ended the confrontation for good. Having been through this once before, John was unusually calm this time. He first gathered all the cash at the scene, then took the tool with him. After making sure nothing was left behind, he rushed out of the house. But he would never have imagined that a single bloody handprint he accidentally left behind would later become the fatal mistake that brought everything crashing down.